40K AoS. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Tattoo Tabletop. My name is James, and today we just got a really quick one. So, I was thinking recently about the two main game systems that I play, Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40K, two of my preferable favorites, although I am working on building a Sons of Horus army for Horus Heresy. Technically, I could probably play Warcry, I could like Kill Team, which I do plan on experimenting with, but I really got to thinking about the rules. The rules for both of them can be somewhat of a longer document, and it can be very overwhelming and very confusing for a first-time player. But it can also be confusing and sometimes a little difficult when you're going between game systems. When you come from playing Age of Sigmar and then go to playing 40K, sometimes there's a rule or a thing that you forget about. Like, for example, in 40K, you have consolidation. In Age of Sigmar, you do not have consolidation. Both have pile-in, but both do not have consolidation. So I'm just going to talk about the couple rules that I would love to see in each individual game system. You know how many of you aren't subscribed to this channel? It's staggering numbers. You're getting an A+ to not being subscribed. So, go down there and hit that subscribe. It's completely free. And if you want to, hit a like. That would also be nice. Starting with number one, the one thing I would like Age of Sigmar to have from the Warhammer 40K side is the cover system. The cover system in 40K has become a lot more intuitive, particularly in 10th edition. I think things have been made a lot more clear. It's a lot more understood. Hey, can you fully see the model? No? Cool, it gets cover. Are you fully on this terrain feature or not? Cool, cover, etc. Things like that. I think the cover system as it stands for Age of Sigmar is non-existent / not really workable. It kind of drives me insane coming from the 40K side to the Age of Sigmar side, because something as important as cover could be great and it could be a good benefit to adding some durability to your army, but it's just kind of hard to actually piecemeal out. If your models can see one guy just chilling out in the open, you get no cover because of the fact that Age of Sigmar has switched to you're no longer allocating two models. That is one thing that separated itself in 4th edition. Now you allocate wounds to the unit until you kill something. So you taking 10 wounds and you have 12 wounds or something, you pick up enough stuff until you lose one, but you don't allocate per model. It's just that unit took the amount of wounds, and that's why you pluck what you do and you remove what you do, maintaining coherency, yada 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 yada. So that's one thing I think Age of Sigmar could benefit from, is the more intuitive system of cover from Warhammer 40,000. Even if it comes from a situation of just being like, okay, if you're wanting to add +1 to your save, then you have to pluck from the models that can be seen, etc., and then you roll, add modifiers, so on and so forth. I think that that's something that could be really beneficial and do something really cool for Age of Sigmar, and thus kind of reduce the shooting aspect of it, because shooting is strong in Warhammer 40K as well as Age of Sigmar, so it'd be nice to see that just toned down just a pinch. Speaking of which, let's go on to what rule I would like from Age of Sigmar to Warhammer 40K. If I was going to pick something, granted it's a little difficult and it's tricky because I understand the perspective of it, is Feel No Pains. Obviously, Feel No Pains have two different meanings. Obviously, you have the Feel No Pain, which is the Warhammer 40,000 version, and you have Wards, which are the Age of Sigmar version. Both mean the same thing. They both mean when you take damage, you roll dice, and how many X you roll, like Ward 5, Feel No Pain 5, how many of those you roll, you keep your model up. Now, this is where it's tricky. In Age of Sigmar, it's a little bit easier because you're allocating wounds to the unit. There's this whole big pool of wounds. So when you take all those wounds, you just roll all your wards. That's just it. It's just, okay, I saved this many, I pluck this many models, done. Easy peasy. It makes the game go a lot quicker. You'll often find that Age of Sigmar games can sometimes wrap up a bit easier versus 40K, which oftentimes you hear about things being on chess clocks. Tends to happen more in 40K than in Age of Sigmar, in my humble opinion. But that's neither here nor there. Specifically when it comes to 40K, for example, I've played Black Templars and I play Righteous Crusaders, and I play the specific vow where you get a 6-up Feel No Pain army-wide. Now the reason this is huge is because you roll per model, which can sometimes, this is where this makes it a little complicated, it can sometimes make it very difficult. It can make your army a lot more durable because you're allocating to the model. And so let's say you have a 5-up Feel No Pain and you have one model and you're just like, okay, roll 2 dice, and you're taking 2 damage a pop. Okay, roll 2 dice. All right, there's a 6 and a 5. Okay, so he's completely fine. All right, there's a 5 and a 4. Okay, now he's got 1 wound. And then, all right, here's this one. And oh, okay, he survived. And oh, now he's... You end up, there's a lot of mental gymnastics. You really got to be on your game when you're playing Warhammer 40,000 and having Feel No Pains in your army. It's a very good thing to have. It's a very beneficial thing to have. But when you have multi-wound models taking these Feel No Pains, it can really slow down the game substantially, or you lose track and then it feels bad because you're trying to keep track of it. So like you're like, okay, well, I failed 5 saves, so you set out 5 individual dice, and then you're just like, all right, they're 3 damage each. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, okay, he's dead, alive, I think. Yep, nope, dead. So like, there's a lot of mental gymnastics that go into it. Granted, I understand that that's how these game systems are supposed to work. You allocate per model in the 40k, you allocate per unit on Age of Sigmar. It would be a little bit nicer to see the Feel No Pains rolled all at once, which granted you can do in the form of mortal wounds. If you have Feel No Pain, and more likely than not, at least in Warhammer 40,000, you're more likely to have a Feel No Pain against mortal wounds, in which case you just roll all those at once because those carry over to the other models. But I understand, because when you have something, then you're going to get players who are allocating things like 13 las cannons and building lists like that, so that way they can just bulldoze whatever unit you have in front of you because the damage is carrying through, versus just killing 13 models. That's, I understand the prospect of that, also because, you know, it's a las cannon. It's not necessarily like a bzzz kind of thing. I think it's more of a bzzz. I don't know why las cannons make bzzz sounds like bees, but that's where we're at. Just as kind of a bonus option here as well, one other rule that I would love to see, and that was, from my understanding, in existence before, is I like one of the rules that's in Horus Heresy, and that was in boarding actions of all things. You can't kill what you can't see. Obviously, in the existence of guns, you have a big unit that sees one model, but that model is attached to 15 more models, and you unload all of your weapons at this one model, and then it wipes out the rest of the unit that can't be seen. That doesn't really make sense from a wargaming perspective. I mean, the whole point being like, oh, I see this thing, I kill this thing. Granted, I understand where it could get a little gamey, there could be some different things with it, but it's just something that I would see as more immersive. I think it's one of the things I liked about boarding actions is if you had one model exposed, but the other ones were still hidden, you can only kill the one, but you're also dealing with a significantly smaller game size as opposed to 2,000 points of orcs or something like that, where you have a ton of models. Kind of makes a little bit more sense, but it also doesn't feel nearly as intuitive, where one unit can just absolutely annihilate an entire other unit, even though they can only see the gun of one model. Just doesn't quite track for me personally. Obviously, you still get your saves, yada, yada, yada. And at least in that benefit, the cover system does work. So I'll give it that. There we go. Those are my rules that I would put into the different game systems, share among them. Obviously, there's plenty of discourse to be had about this, because obviously you don't want the same game system across every game. Otherwise, what point would you have for playing them? If you're playing Age of Sigmar, you don't want to play 40k in Age of Sigmar, and if you're playing 40k, you don't play Age of Sigmar in 40k. But I do think that there are some rules that should translate over. So let me know down in the comments down below which rules would you like to see from other game systems brought into these game systems. I think there's a large discussion that could be had about that, and who knows, maybe one day JW will be watching and maybe add it in there. But let me know down in the comments below. Otherwise, I've been Tattoo Tabletop, and I don't know about you, I got some events coming up, so I'm just gonna go paint something.